All right, so we're continuing on with our splayed dovetail stool. We made the cuts for our pins. Now I'm going to remove the waste in between and show you some ways to make that easier. I'm going to use my jeweler's saw. I'm going to drop that right into my saw kerf. I'm going to go right above it. And remember, you're at an angle now, so you're going to want to watch both sides. You want to stay at least about a 1/16 above. Once you get to that height, you're going to start moving it back and forth, but you're not cutting. You're rotating the blade. And I'm a little bit high there. I'm going to try to get a little closer. The closer you get, the less work you have to do after with the chisel. But again, it's like the Price is Right. It's getting the closest without going over. That's pretty good. I'll try to angle down a little more as I go. Moving back and forth, kind of angling the blade as I make my cut. Now these blades heat up and snap sometimes, so there's no need to go fast. Slower will prevent that. Just wiggling it back and forth, we're going across until we get to the next saw kerf. At that point the piece will break off and we'll be able to take it out. You can hear it, I'm getting close. And that piece comes right out. So I'm going to go ahead and go through all of that using my jeweler's saw, and then I'll show you how to use the chisel to clean up that shoulder. All right, it figures it's on the last one. This always happens. I snap the blade, I'll put a new one in. Again, that happens as it heats up, so if you find that's happening a lot, just slow down on your cut. So now that I've removed all my waste with my jeweler's saw, I need to chisel my shoulder clean. The angle on this can make that a little bit difficult. I've made a little saddle that we used earlier to transfer our pins. I'm going to use that with another board to help us tap that shoulder clean with the chisel. So let me show you that. All right, so I have a previous pin board mounted to help you visualize what we're going to be doing here. This is the little saddle that we made for transferring our pins, and it's going to help us out again. So you can see that we have a piece here and then another piece dropping. It's dropping at that 7 degrees. And then I have another piece with that 7-degree ripped along the edge, and I've taken that and clamped them both in with the top of these two boards saddling right at the marking gauge scribe. And what this is going to let me do is it's going to let me take my chisel, rest it, so I have a reference surface on that 7-degree bevel, and just tap it along and across, and I'll be able to come in from both sides. So let's mount in our piece that has all that waste on the shoulder that we need to clean up, and we'll see how it works. I'm going to put it on there, and I'm going to make sure that the marking gauge scribe is level with the top of the surface. And to start, I'll just use some spring clamps to kind of hold it in place for me. So right there on the scribe line, that looks good on that side. I'll check the other side. Sometimes when you adjust one side, it changes the other. That still looks good. Now I'm going to take this piece that has my 7-degree bevel ripped on it. I'm going to line it up on the face. Make sure your spring clamps aren't in the way of that board. I'm going to drop these down a little bit. You can see this makes it relatively easy. My hands are free. And now I'm going to check on this face that this board lines up exactly on my marking gauge scribe. I'll do one last check on the back. That looks good. I'm going to clamp it into place with something more substantial than a spring clamp. I'm going to use these earring clamps. The Craig makes a very nice one that automatically adjusts for the thickness. It's a little easier than to use than these. If you don't have either of those, a C-clamp is good. It's just a little more awkward. This lets me put it on and just clamp it in place, just like a vice grip. Well, that didn't sound quite tight enough. I'm going to give it a little extra squeeze, a little extra turn. That clicked right in. So before I start cutting, I like to do one last check. I'm even there on the back. I'm even on the front. And so what chisel do you use? So here I have a normal bench chisel. And here I have a Japanese dovetailing chisel. This is shaped more like a mortising style chisel. It's thicker here. It also isn't hollow ground, it's flat. This does a good job of pounding that waste out. If all you have is a bench chisel, that's fine, but if you'll notice that it's not as thick here, and what I find, because it is hollow ground, what happens is if you're taking a mallet to this and tapping, you dullin it pretty quickly. What I would rather do is leave my nice sharp bench chisel aside for now. I might do some paring later and I'll want it sharp for that as I'm fitting my dovetail. And I'm going to use my Japanese dovetailing chisel because it's more like a mortising chisel. If you have a nice sharp mortising chisel, that'll work well. Or just have a second bench chisel that you don't mind dullining up. So I got my mallet. I'm going to rest this flat on the surface, and I'm going to tap across. Now, if you have a lot of waste, you can do one of two things. You can either kind of start at the top and work your way through, or if you want to speed it up a little bit, you can make some saw curves to just make that waste tap off. Don't go all the way down to the shoulder. Just go down to make it easier for you. I think that's a little time consuming, but some people like it. You can see that makes it easier. Comes off a little easier. I'm going to start at the top and just kind of tap my way down. You can see this removes the waste pretty quickly, and then you're also able to get in from the back side. You want to come in from the front and in from the back. The marking gauge scribe should really prevent any blowout, but you know, if you're taking off a generous amount, I just find it's safer to kind of come in from each side. Now I'm close in the front, I'll come in from the back. So that gets the majority of the waste out. If I want to get it a little bit cleaner, a little bit smoother, I'll use my bench chisel that's nice and sharp, and I'll do a paring action. Instead of hitting it hard with the mallet, I'm going to take this and kind of sweep across. This gives me a cleaner look on my shoulder. So as I'm paring and I get close to my pins, you might find that there's a little spot where the saw didn't really get it, and that's kind of not unexpected in this project because you're holding that saw back at 7 degrees. It's kind of awkward. But we do need to get rid of that, or our dovetail won't seat tightly against our shoulder. So to get that, I'm going to take my paring chisel, I'm going to press it against the side of one of the pins, and I'm not cutting into the pin. I'm just pressing, and then I push down. And you can either twist it to get that last bit of waste out, or after you've pressed down, you can come back in again and pare more. So I'll do that on the other side as well. I'll rest it against the side of the pin. I'll press down. And I'm not changing my saw curve. I'm just getting that waste that the saw didn't quite get to. And then I can either twist it to get it out, see how that removes that waste nicely, or I can come back in and pare it from this side, and then it will also come out. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed in that manner to remove the waste in between all of these pins, and then I'll move forward and I'll show you some of the secrets of how you fine-tune your fit so when you tap it together, everything seats nicely. Continue along to see the rest of the series. Subscribe for more woodworking videos.